Who are your early backers who funded you?
Our early investors were Foundation Capital. Some of our later larger rounds were mostly led by Westbridge Capital.
And did you see some threats during COVID? Did you see some opportunities?
We saw a lot of this openness toward remote happening in 2019 itself with talent shortages. COVID, of course, accelerated it a great deal, particularly with large enterprises.
What was that sudden thing that accelerated you to unicorn status?
So today we help all the major frontier AI companies improve their foundation models. OpenAI was the first company to realize the value of expert human feedback for post-training.
So I'm going to ask slightly, something that is a very important question to be asked in my view. So obviously, as you know, I don't need to repeat the fact that I have been passionate about AI, despite being a non-techie, because in use case of even something as boring as legal, where we work. So as a transactional lawyer, I've been, doing this, asking the questions around this for a long time now. So I hardly need to establish that I'm interested and I'm for the AI movement. And we've seen in the last 2 years how dramatically things have changed. But equally, is it fair to say that some of the concerns that used to exist, for example, privacy concerns, accuracy concerns, in today's world, deepfakes are a big concern. And it's like unbelievable how incredibly good looking or accurate looking they are, but they're long. So that's one. Secondly, there's a lot of scams, especially, people historically think that Singapore is like an extremely safe market and a safe city, which it is. It is in the physical sense. But last 2 years, I'm seeing a dramatic change in all sorts of scams which are perpetrated, which are primarily technology-driven scams, where they are, using somebody's voice using AI. They have used somebody's voice to say, this person is being held in some jail, those kind of stories. Earlier, these used to happen secondarily, but now it sounds primary because the person is hearing it in their son's voice or daughter's voice. That's scary. That's the second part. And the third part, which is also scary, is are we as a human race becoming too dependent on technology because of AI? We have always been progressively, that's what progress has always been about. Earlier, we used to go and we used to use bullocks to, till the land, and now we have tractors, and that's good. But with AI, the problem is that are we all becoming at risk? Are we all at risk of becoming a little lazy as a race? And how can we kind of keep ourselves relevant in the age of AI? These are some of the questions that I wanted to raise. And the reason is, and it's not just me, voices who are a lot more authoritative than me have asked this question. I'm sure you're aware of this gentleman who's considered one of the godfathers of AI, Jeffrey Quinton. He's also raised these issues, saying that, there needs to be some sort of a gatekeeping which needs to happen. So, and that's where I'm going to put on my lawyer hat and say that at some level, to protect these things, to protect, the misuse of AI or prevent these kind of societal things, is some sort of a rational regulation from governments needed. Of course, it can't be over regulated either. It can't be where they're not letting the industry grow. But at the same time, to prevent this kind of misuse, just like you have data privacy laws, just like earlier you had Information Technology Act in India, similar laws around the world. So I'd like to get your perspective on this. And how do you think that the risk can be addressed technologically, and how can it be addressed regulatorily?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. People have certainly been doing work technologically on AI safety and trying to make it difficult for it to sort of engage in some of these bad behaviors and so on. But it remains to be seen how robust they will be. I think some of these maybe put one line of defense, but at the moment, at least, a lot of those very much look like one line of defense, not a lot more. Particularly with such a proliferation of open source models, I think a lot of open source models which even have one line of defense like this that line of defense can easily be stripped away with some fine tuning and to engage in more bad behavior. Regulation is an interesting question. I think the question becomes, how do you do it in a way which actually serves your end goal and does not just hinder AI progress. I think, unfortunately, almost everything people are talking about would be the kind which would just create more monopolies and so on, and perhaps make it harder for ground up innovation to come up. And some countries that over-regulate are probably just at risk at falling behind some of their peers in other parts of the world where things might be less regulated.
So, that's a fair point you're making. And to me, I have always said this. I've been on a few government committees in India as well, chief ministerial committees and stuff like that. So I have always said that regulation it doesn't have to always be seen negatively. Just because something is regulated is not a bad thing. And the regulators also need to stop thinking like that if they have to regulate something doesn't mean they have to become cops, right? That is not the only point of regulation. The point of regulation is also to get that information and to have it in case something needs to be done, point number one. Point number two, to have some sort of a regulatory framework which ensures that, private enterprises left to themselves are unlikely. I won't say they won't. Some may, some may not. But largely, especially if they start becoming, if they become a public company, they raise money from investors, there are going to be other parties who are going to say that you got to make the money. So some of those considerations will usually be there. So I think, therefore, I'm talking about more of a balancing thing from regulation. But to your point, yes, I 100% agree. Countries or markets that over-regulate will just make themselves unviable. So I would look at it as market forces. Just like, certain countries get a lot of FDI, certain countries get a lot of talent from abroad migrating to them. Countries like US, countries like Singapore. Whereas it doesn't happen with some other countries, and it's very clear the benefits of those outweigh the risks of those approaches that those governments have taken. So I think it's no different with any sort of regulation like that. But I think some sort of a regulation will ensure that, you're talking about monopolies. The monopolies can be created even the other way. If you keep it anarchist too, some sort of monopolies can be created because, for example, somebody has, for example, registered a patent. So for that period, they have a monopoly legally. So monopolies will be there. So the point is, what do you let them do with that monopoly and what do you not, right? So anyway, so this is always a interesting legal versus ethical sort of a thing. And I am somebody who believes that in some things, clarity is better than just leaving it. I don't know if you, watch cricket. I know we're in the Bay Area. I should be giving baseball references, but I don't know the terms of baseball. I know the phrases and terms and rules of cricket. So I'll say this, right? Cricket, there's often this thing that it's a gentleman's game. And then suddenly they'll say, you can't do this. So it's not on. So there are some players who argue, if it's legal, I will do it. And if it's not correct, it should actually be made illegal, which makes sense if you look at it, because what industry wants is clarity. They don't want to be painted with a broad brush, and they don't want to be living up to standards which are amorphous and not easily defensible, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that is fair. I think the main problem, though, is I think what you're saying holds for a lot of other things, right? It holds for marketing tactics, or it holds for a ton of other things.
Indeed.
Where yes, one can define the line clearly, and the analogy transfers quite well. I think the main difficulty here is that there is too many moving parts in terms of what is even the problem at hand. For example, you have one set of parties that are more worried about these things, becoming smarter, much smarter than humans and enslaving us all. There's one set of parties. There's another set of parties who are, interested in the room for misuse in terms of these scams and things like this.
Correct.
So it's first even worth asking, what is it you're trying to stop to begin with? And then
that's a fair question.
And then how do you even intend to stop it? Because the one of the larger problems I suppose that comes here is the relatively global nature of this. Like for example, crypto has been relatively harder to regulate because of some of the different dynamics there. This one, I suspect, has some of those characteristics, particularly with so many good open source models coming from all over the world.
True. No, absolutely. I think this is not we are not going to solve this in the course of this conversation. Our job is to raise and give our views on this, which is very interesting. Now, let me ask you one more question, which is sort of about.
In fact, I should tell you, like, compared to safety, I spend a lot more time thinking of usefulness, since I do feel like the usefulness of these models have nowhere been tapped to the extent it could be.
Absolutely. So I agree. So that is the problem. So if you have, and that's why I'm saying it needs to be regulated, because it's like saying that if there are always going to be some people saying, oh my God, this is going to, enslave us. Somebody else will say only 5 people are going to benefit from this. Somebody else will say, blah. So my point is, when there are so many uncertainties, also the players will not invest in it. But if the regime is more clear, right, it'll be clear. So for example, it's a very random, I'm not necessarily saying this is a very accurate analogy, but it's the same. And like in India, sports betting is illegal, right? So because sports betting is illegal, there is a whole illegal industry, underground industry that profits from it. The government could very well legalize it and tax it, and even tax it at a higher tax rate, and people will gladly pay, right? But instead, the leakage is going to the underworld, which is not optimal for any. So what I'm trying to say is that regulation is not necessarily a bad thing.
Sure.
But if you regulate it the right way.
Sure. Anyway, I don't think I have any particularly unique insights on this topic compared to what you might hear.
Yeah. We talked about regulation and technology. Now let me go back to the technology bit, because that's again something which is fascinating, because obviously, like you said, the technological aspects are always going to be challenged because of the open source models. Now, do you really think that this is going to create a new breed of super companies in the AI cybersecurity companies are already having their time in the sun right now? We've read about the CyberArk deal, and we read about CyberArk, which is the Palo Alto Networks merger. And there was the Google Viz deal as well a couple of months ago. So there's a lot of action happening here anyway. But do you also think that some of these deals are being driven, and the valuations being paid for these companies have to do with the fact that in the AI world, there is going to be a special breed of security companies that are going to be, pretty much monopolizing security, and therefore there's a battle for who's going to take that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, there's no question. There's a whole bunch of new, attack vectors that are coming on the scene. Like you've named some of them. I fully expect a lot of this to blow up significantly. As a result, there is probably going to be a lot of space for new cybersecurity companies, some of these existing ones to grow, etc. I have not looked at the specifics of these deals. Were they at quite extraordinary multiples, or were they at relatively more standard multiples? I have not seen all of that, so I can't. I don't know.
Even I haven't taken some expert study or something, but market, what you hear is the valuations are very, very high.
Okay,
but Obviously, the people, making. I mean, it happens all the time, right?
Right.
Even when Facebook acquired WhatsApp, people thought they were nuts to pay 19 billion valuation, right? But see where they are now.
Right.
So these things, some of these bets, we'll have to see where they'll go.
Yeah. I mean, I feel quite confident, that the cyber security market itself is going to be a lot bigger. Of course, I do not know about the specific offerings of these products, and then there'll be the decision regarding are they in a good position to sort of graduate into offering LLM security related things also, because they have the customer base and all that. I have not really analyzed that in that kind of detail.
Okay, but you do see some specific, you see a lot of capital being poured into developing new securities technologies.
For sure. Right? Yeah, because there is so many new attack vectors that have opened up. Correct.
Okay, great. Do you think that Indian companies should focus on developing their own LLMs?
Fine-tuning these models to make them multilingual in the Indian languages can be a nice sort of a stepping stone. In the last 10 or 15 years, a lot of Indian companies have successfully cracked the SaaS code of being able to sell into the US market. The next generation of SaaS definitely is the vertical SaaS agent.
Today, we are a 4 trillion economy, and the goal is to be 10 trillion by 2032. Do you see AI as a big catalyst or steroid in that process?
I expect AI to play a significant role. How significant is difficult to say.